it'd be measured a lot against, singing it, and there's nothing I can. And how many albums they got? It's like I have a couple, and they have they have a stack, but I didn't know if I could do it or not.
Axl Rose. When people hear the name Axl Rose, they immediately think of rock and roll's most unpredictable genius. He's known as the explosive frontman whose voice can go from a soft whisper to a powerful scream in seconds. Rose is also famous for being a perfectionist who spent many years working on the album Chinese Democracy while fans waited patiently around the world. But behind all the legendary status of Guns N' Roses lies a man who is well known for his explosive anger and his very honest opinions about the music industry. Unlike many rock stars who learn to keep quiet in public, Axl's famous outbursts and backstage fights have become legendary stories in rock music history. He once told Rolling Stone magazine something that shows his personality perfectly. "If I think something sucks, I'm not going to pretend it doesn't just because some record executive thinks I should be diplomatic." This attitude has led to many conflicts over the years, from huge fights that broke up bands to harsh interview comments that ended friendships. Axl's musical hatred goes much deeper than simple work disagreements. His conflicts show us an artist who has a very strong vision of what rock music should be, and this puts him at odds with musicians he sees as sellouts, fake performers, or threats to everything rock should represent. Throughout his career, he has publicly fought with several major musicians, and even some of rock's biggest legends have felt the full force of his anger. The conflict with Kurt Cobain. The tension between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain represented a basic clash between two completely different ideas of what rock music should be in the 1990s. According to people who saw their interactions, the dislike was immediate and went both ways. This conflict was more than just a personal disagreement. It represented two different generations and styles of rock music collide. Shouting Doug Goldstein, who worked as a tour manager for Guns N' Roses, revealed that Axl saw Kurt as everything that was wrong with the new grunge movement. Axl viewed Nirvana's success as a rejection of everything he believed rock should include: technical skill, showmanship, and larger-than-life personalities. For Axl, rock music was supposed to be about putting on a big show and demonstrating musical ability, while Kurt and Nirvana represented a more raw, simple approach. The friction first became public at the 1992 MTV Video Music Awards when both bands were at the peak of their popularity. During rehearsals for the show, Axl reportedly walked up to Kurt and demanded that he get his wife, Courtney Love, under control. Courtney had apparently been heckling from the audience, and this bothered Axl. Kurt's response was dismissive and reportedly included telling Axl to shut up and just sing his songs, calling him old man. What made Axl particularly angry was what he saw as Nirvana's fake anti-establishment attitude while they were actually achieving huge commercial success. According to Slash, during a heated band meeting in 1992, Axl went on a rant about this contradiction. He said something like, "They're making millions of dollars while complaining about making millions of dollars. At least we're honest about wanting to be rock stars. This reluctant fame act is more fake than anything we've ever done." The anger got worse when grunge music began to overshadow hair metal commercially. Tom Zutt, who worked as an executive at Geffen Records, remembered Axl's reaction to Nirvana's record-breaking sales. Axl couldn't understand how 3 simple chords and deliberate sloppiness could outsell the technical precision he had spent years perfecting. He called it the dumbing down of rock and roll, showing his belief that music should be technically complex and polished. This feud represented more than just two singers not liking each other. It was really about two completely different philosophies of what rock music should be. Axl represented the old school of rock with big production, technical skill, and theatrical performances, while Kurt represented the new wave of grunge with its emphasis on authenticity, simplicity, and emotional rawness over technical perfection. The long-running battle with Vince Neil. The hatred between Axl Rose and Motley Crue's Vince Neil represents one of rock music's most personal and longest-lasting fights. This rivalry began over a woman and grew into a decades-long war of words and occasional threats of violence. Unlike some of Axl's other conflicts, this one was deeply personal from the very beginning. According to former Guns N' Roses guitarist Gilby Clarke, the feud started when Izzy Stradlin allegedly hit Vince's girlfriend at a party. But the conflict quickly became much bigger than that original incident. Axl saw Vince as representing everything that was superficial about the Sunset Strip music scene, the focus on hair, attitude, and putting image over musical substance. The feud exploded into public view at the 1989 MTV Video Music Awards when Neil challenged Rose to a fight, screaming at him across the venue. According to security personnel who were there, Axl's response was immediate and harsh. He yelled back, "I'll fight you right now, you bloated has-been. At least when I hit notes, they're the ones I'm aiming for." This response showed both Axl's willingness to fight and his tendency to make it about musical ability. What particularly made Axl angry about Neil was what he saw as Vince's lack of vocal development over the years. During recording sessions for Use Your Illusion, producer Mike Klink remembered Axl's frustration when people compared the two singers. Axl would become extremely angry and say things like, "Don't compare my voice to someone who sounds like he's gargling with whiskey. I've spent years training my instrument while he spent years destroying his." This comment reveals a lot about how Axl viewed himself versus other rock singers. He saw himself as someone who took his craft seriously and worked to improve his voice, while he viewed Vince as someone who had damaged his voice through poor technique and lifestyle choices. For Axl, this wasn't just about personal dislike. It was about professional standards and respect for the art of singing. The animosity reached dangerous levels during the early 1990s, when both bands were touring extensively. According to a roadie who worked with both acts, death threats were allegedly exchanged through intermediaries. The situation became so tense that Axl would send messages through crew members about what he would do if he ever found Vince alone. It got scary enough that venue security had to create completely separate arrival and departure protocols to make sure the two singers never encountered each other. This feud lasted for many years and represents how personal conflicts in rock music can escalate far beyond their original causes. What started as a dispute over an incident at a party grew into a long-term hatred that affected both bands' ability to perform at certain venues and events. The ego clash with Sebastian Bach. The bitter rivalry between Axl Rose and Skid Row's Sebastian Bach came from what people close to both singers describe as a clash between two enormous egos competing for the title of rock's most dangerous frontman. Both had operatic voices, both had explosive personalities, and both refused to acknowledge the other as legitimate competition. John Kaladner, who worked as an AR executive at Geffen Records, explained the dynamic by saying it was like watching two alpha wolves in the same territory. Both singers had similar styles and approaches to rock music, which made their rivalry particularly intense because they were essentially competing for the same space in the rock world. The tension first appeared during the late 1980s Sunset Strip scene, when both were working to establish their reputations. According to former Guns N' Roses drummer Steven Adler, the dislike was immediate and obvious. Axl saw Sebastian as a wannabe who was copying his style, the high notes, the stage theatrics, even the way he moved around on stage. Behind Sebastian's back, Axl would call him Discount Axl. What particularly bothered Rose was Bach's tendency to reference Guns N' Roses in interviews while trying to position Skid Row as their equals. This seemed to anger Axl because he felt that Sebastian was trying to use Guns N' Roses' fame to boost his own career. During a 1991 backstage encounter at a festival, witnesses reported that Axl confronted Sebastian directly, telling him to stop name-dropping their band in interviews and accusing him of trying to ride their coattails to relevance. The feud got worse when Sebastian began making claims about his vocal range and abilities. According to producer Bob Rock, who worked with both singers, Axl's reaction to these boasts was swift and brutal. Axl said something like, "Range isn't just about hitting high notes. It's about control, emotion, and knowing when not to scream. Any karaoke singer can shriek loud enough to break glass." This comment shows how Axl viewed singing as a sophisticated art form that required more than just the ability to hit high notes. He saw himself as having developed real skill and technique, while he viewed Sebastian as someone who was all flash and no substance. For Axl, it wasn't enough to just sound impressive. A real rock singer needed to have emotional depth and technical control. The rivalry between these two singers represents how competitive the rock music world can be. especially when two artists have similar styles and are trying to occupy the same space in the industry. Both wanted to be seen as the premier rock frontman of their era, and neither was willing to share that spotlight. The contempt for Fred Durst. Axl Rose's disdain for Limp Bizkit's Fred Durst represents his broader frustration with what he viewed as nu metal's destruction of authentic rock music. According to people who witnessed his reactions, few artists triggered his contempt quite like Durst did. This conflict was less personal than some of his others and more about what Axl saw as a fundamental misunderstanding of what rock music should be. A former executive at Interscope Records who worked during both artists' peak years revealed that Axl saw nu metal as everything wrong with rock's evolution. He viewed Fred as a fake who was packaging hip-hop attitude with watered-down metal and calling it revolutionary. For Axl, this represented a fundamental betrayal of what rock music was supposed to stand for. The animosity first appeared when Limp Bizkit exploded onto the music scene in the late 1990s, just as Guns N' Roses was in creative limbo working on new material. According to former GNR guitarist Robin Fink, Axl's reaction to their success was immediate and hostile. He would watch their music videos and become furious about the baseball caps and rap vocals over what he considered dumbed-down guitar riffs. He saw it as the death of everything rock stood for. What particularly made Axl angry was Durst's approach to being a rock star. During the Chinese Democracy recording sessions, producer Roy Thomas Baker remembered Axl's angry speech after hearing a Limp Bizkit radio interview. Axl said something like, "This guy thinks rock and roll is about acting tough and talking trash. Real rock is about vulnerability disc. This conflict represents Axl's broader frustration with what he saw as the commercialization and dumbing down of rock music. He viewed artists like Fred Durst as threats to the artistic integrity of rock music, and he wasn't shy about expressing these views publicly. The tragic recognition in Scott Weiland, the complex hatred between Axl Rose and Stone Temple Pilots' Scott Weiland, ran much deeper than musical differences. It represented what people close to both singers describe as a tragic recognition of shared demons and completely opposite responses to them. This was perhaps Axl's most complicated relationship with another musician because it involved seeing his own potential dark future reflected in another person. Former Guns N' Roses manager Alan Niven explained the dynamic by saying that Axl saw in Scott everything he could have become if he had let his darkness win. The addiction, the unreliability, the way drugs destroyed Scott's voice and relationships. It was like Axl was looking into a funhouse mirror of his worst possible future. This made the relationship particularly painful and complicated. The animosity first appeared during the grunge era when Stone Temple Pilots achieved massive success with their debut album. According to a former Geffen Records executive, Axl's reaction to Scott's vocal style was immediate and harsh. He called it Jim Morrison karaoke and claimed that Scott was stealing his lower register approach while adding nothing original to it. This criticism shows how Axl viewed authenticity in rock music. He believed that artists should bring something new rather than just copying existing styles. What particularly triggered Axl was Scott's well-documented struggles with heroin addiction and how it affected his performances. During a conversation with producer Mike Klink in the mid-1990s, Axl reportedly said, "I fought my demons. To get better at what I do, he's let his demons make him worse. There's a difference between being tortured for your art and being tortured by your weakness." This comment reveals a lot about how Axl viewed the relationship between personal struggles and artistic creation. He believed that artists should use their problems and pain to create better art, while he saw Scott as someone who was letting his problems destroy his ability to create. For Axl, this represented a fundamental difference in how they approached both life and music. The tension reached its peak when both singers were dealing with legal troubles and band instability in the late 1990s. According to a music journalist who covered both stories, Axl was particularly angry when their situations were compared. He allegedly said, "My problems come from caring too much about the music. His problems come from caring more about the needle than the notes." This harsh judgment shows how Axl viewed the difference between what he saw as professional dedication and personal weakness. He believed his own problems came from his commitment to his art, while he viewed Scott's problems as coming from a lack of commitment to anything other than his addiction. The relationship between Axl and Scott represents one of the most tragic aspects of rock music, the fine line between creative genius and self-destruction. Both men struggled with personal demons, but they handled those struggles in very different ways, and Axl's harsh judgment of Scott may have been partially based on his own fears about what he could become. The most personal betrayal, Slash, the most devastating and personal musical hatred in Axl Rose's career, doesn't center on a rival from another band, but on his former best friend and creative partner, Slash. This wasn't just about musical differences. It was about the destruction of one of rock's griots, A-test partnerships, and the bitter aftermath that lasted for decades. The relationship between these two musicians represents both the highest highs and lowest lows of creative collaboration. Former Guns N' Roses drummer Matt Sorum revealed that the hatred between Axl and Slash was the most toxic thing he had ever witnessed in rock music. It wasn't just about the band or music. It was personal, vindictive, and absolutely devastating to watch two people who had been like brothers tear each other apart. The destruction of their relationship affected not just them personally, but the entire band and millions of fans around the world. The relationship began deteriorating during the Use Your Illusion recording sessions when Axl's perfectionism started to clash with Slash's more instinctive approach to making music. According to producer Mike Klink, the creative tension quickly became personal and bitter. Axl would spend hours carefully crafting a vocal part, trying to get every detail perfect, while Slash would nail a complicated guitar solo in just one take. Axl saw this as Slash not caring enough about the music, while Slash saw it as Axl overthinking everything and making the process unnecessarily complicated. What transformed these creative differences into genuine hatred was Axl's growing belief that Slash was actively working to undermine his vision for the band. During the tumultuous 1990s, former manager Doug Goldstein recalled how Axl's concerns grew into paranoia. He became convinced that Slash was sabotaging his ideas, going to the press behind his back, and trying to turn the other band members against him. Whether these beliefs were based in reality or not, Axl believed them completely, and this belief poisoned their relationship. The breaking point came when Slash left the band in 1996. According to legal documents from subsequent lawsuits, Axl felt personally betrayed by what he saw as abandonment during his most vulnerable period. He reportedly told close friends, "I trusted him with my life, my art, my dreams. He threw it all away because he couldn't handle not being the star. That's not a creative difference. That's character assassination." This statement reveals the depth of Axl's feeling of betrayal. For him, this wasn't just about losing a band member or creative partner. It was about losing someone he had trusted with the most important things in his life. He felt that Slash had not only abandoned him personally, but had also betrayed everything they had built together artistically. For many years after Slash left, Axl refused to even acknowledge his existence publicly. He wouldn't allow Slash's name to be mentioned in interviews, and he made it clear that he considered their partnership permanently over. The hatred seemed to consume both men in different ways, with fans constantly asking about the possibility of a reunion, while both musicians insisted it would never happen. The most revealing moment came during the band's surprise reunion announcement in 2016, more than 20 years after Slash had left. According to sources close to the negotiations, Axl's decision to reunite wasn't about forgiveness or renewed friendship. Instead, it was about proving that he was bigger than his hatred and strong enough to move past it. He reportedly told his management team, "I'm not doing this because I forgive him. I'm doing this because I'm finally strong enough to stand next to my past without it destroying my future." This statement shows how Axl had grown and changed over the years. Rather than holding on to his anger forever, he had reached a point where he could put aside his personal feelings for the sake of the music and the fans. The reunion wasn't about healing their friendship, but about Axl proving to himself that he could be professional despite their personal history. The relationship between Axl and Slash represents both the creative power that can come from close collaboration and the devastating personal cost when that collaboration falls apart. Their partnership created some of rock's most memorable music, but the destruction of their friendship also created one of rock's most bitter and long-lasting feuds. The fact that they were eventually able to work together again, even without fully reconciling personally, shows both the power of their musical connection and Axl's personal growth over the years. Understanding Axl's approach to conflict. Looking at all of these feuds together, several patterns emerge that help us understand Axl Rose as both an artist and a person. His conflicts weren't random or based simply on personality clashes. They were rooted in his deep beliefs about what rock music should be and his uncompromising standards for artistic integrity. Whether he was right or wrong in these beliefs, his consistency in defending them shows a person who cared deeply about his art. Many of Axl's conflicts centered around his belief that rock music should be technically sophisticated, emotionally authentic, and artistically serious. He had little patience for what he saw as fake attitudes, simplified music, or artists who he believed were more concerned with image than substance. This put him at odds with the grunge movement, nu metal, and various individual artists who represented different approaches to rock music. His feuds also reveal someone who took betrayal very personally and had difficulty separating professional disagreements from personal attacks. The intensity of his anger, particularly toward former friends like Slash, suggests someone who invested deeply in relationships and was correspondingly hurt when those relationships fell apart. His public statements about these conflicts often revealed as much about his own vulnerabilities as they did about his targets. At the same time, Axl's eventual willingness to reunite with Slash, despite their years of hatred, shows personal growth and the ability to put artistic goals above personal grudges. This suggests that, while he may hold on to anger for a long time, he's also capable of moving past it when it serves a greater purpose. These feuds have become part of rock music legend, but they also represent the very real human cost of artistic perfectionism, personal betrayal, and the pressures of fame. They show us an artist who cared so deeply about his music and his artistic vision that he was willing to burn bridges and make enemies to defend what he believed in. Whether this approach was ultimately productive or destructive is something that fans and critics continue to debate, but there's no question that it came from a place of genuine passion for rock music. The story of Axl Rose's feuds is ultimately the story of an artist who refused to compromise his vision, even when that refusal came at great personal cost. His conflicts reveal both his greatest strengths as an artist, his uncompromising dedication to his craft, and his greatest weaknesses as a person, his inability to let go of perceived slights and betrayals. Understanding these feuds helps us understand not just Axl Rose, but the broader tensions and contradictions that have always existed in rock music between artistic integrity and commercial success, between personal relationships and professional ambitions, and between the desire to create authentic art and the pressures of the music industry.